let's start with this quote that I found from Sir Nelson Mandela. Yeah, someone who Mark is quite familiar with. And he said that if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to a man in his language, that goes to his heart. What do you think he means that when you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head? But when you talk to a man in his language, it goes to his heart. What does that mean to you?
You talk with the way he understands. It means it's just language, explain everything. I just share my opinion and some opinion to share and to let him know. But use the language, his language. It means I wear some his thought, mindset, and the style attitude. Use that way to it's like elegant, yes, to tell what I want to do. Actually, it's like he understands it better and agree with me like that.
Thank you so much for sharing, Angelina. That was really a wonderful perspective. And what I'm understanding from what you're saying is when you talk to a man in a language he understands, is more or less, you sharing your own opinion. It's English or Chinese. But when it's about that man's language, it's like you're speaking as if you know what he's thinking. Yeah, you're getting into his mindset. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay, awesome.
Hi there, Adrian here, and this is a video from a Zoom session that we do. We do these Zoom sessions every Sunday and we take questions and answers from the audience, some of our students, some of our members. We never know what questions are coming up, so I'm always excited to do these sessions and I hope to see you at one of them. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below and check out the other playlists that we have. Thank you, enjoy.
My name is Dino Delplush, and I'm a high performance coach. And this young man here is Adrian Cahill, and he is a CEO and founder of Motivate Community, as well as the inceptor of these discussions. So we got to give honor where honor is due. And what I'm going to do at this point is to hand the floor over to Sir Mark, because he would be sharing with you a bit deeper into the whole concept of the use of language pattern and how we can use communication in a way where we get the message across, where we're not only speaking in a language that man or woman can understand, but we're speaking in a language of the man himself. Okay, so Mark, without any further ado, I'll give
cool. Thank you, Dino.
To you.
Thank you. Hopefully let's get the sharing going now. We checked it earlier, so let me just bear with me a sec and I get the deck up. There we go. Right, everybody, welcome and thanks very much for joining me this evening on this talk. Basically, what we're going to talk about is language patterns and how they can help and influence in just different situations. In the quote that Dino said there, that goes very much to the heart of what we are talking about. Yeah, so I'm just going to get this thing to screen share. Just bear with me a sec. It's not moving on for some reason. Come on. Should move. Just trying to get my screen to move on. Okay, bear with me a sec. Okay. Oh. So, right. Aim for today is really to just give you an awareness. There's an amazing book, which I will just show you in a second, which I would recommend for those people that enjoy it, that they read it. So the aim for today is give you an awareness of the different motivation and basically productivity drivers that we have, the rough distribution that we have within the general population, and then how we might actually use those to communicate better. We can use this in every facet of our life, basically, whether it be at work, coaching, and every day. So it is very useful. Now, the thing to remember when we look at this is obviously someone's reaction. Right, the book that I'm going to refer to a lot here, and lots of the stuff that comes with it, is actually this one here, which is called It's Words That Change Minds. And I'd really recommend it for those people. It basically covers what it calls 14 different patterns, which tell you all about the language. And lots of what I talk about here is in this book. And I'll happily share my deck with you afterwards. So don't worry too much about having to scribble notes or if you miss something. Okay, but I really would recommend this book. I found it fascinating for me. I'd like to start with just a couple of practical observations, and I'm sure we've all seen them and had some quotes. Most people, particularly successful people, use the same strategies with others that they themselves believe were right or to do something. But we know people are all different. And surprise, surprise, it doesn't work. And I'm sure if you look back in your work and things like that, you will have seen lots of situations where there may have been things where it fell over and it didn't work. And that's because someone's using one story and they expect it to apply to everybody. If you really want to influence and persuade people, I love this quote, which comes from the author. To get people to go somewhere with you, you need to meet them where they are and not just pretend that they are already where you want them to be. Instead, go to their bus stop, in other words, where they are, and from their bus stop, invite them on the bus. So in other words, connect with them and get with them, understand them, and then bring them to where you want to go. Okay. Oops. Sorry, my internet is being super slow today. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to touch on, there are two, just let me know when this has come through. There are two concepts which I really want to try and cover this evening, and with these deal with people. There are what we call motivation patterns. In other words, what gets you up, what gets you really excited, or just demotivates you, not where you want to be. So that's one set, and we'll go through each of these and get some examples as we go. And then there's the second one, which is productivity patterns. What's the environment that we need to have for us to actually do well? So if you want to, and I'm applying this lots in terms of a business or work environment, but we can apply it equally to family or think coaching, is what are the two sides? So you have motivations, what makes you tick, for another way of putting it, and productivity is what's the environment you need around you to actually blossom. You need to have both of those to be truly successful. So as we say, motivation patterns. On the left, we've got, yay, let's get up and going. And equally, depending what we do, we might go, don't really want to do this. So it's demotivating. So it's really, really important. There are actually, okay, so here are the motivation patterns. Okay, so we've got proactive or reactive, criteria, hot buttons. I'll touch on each of these with a slide and some words as we go. Direction. Now, this is a really interesting one. Do you go towards goals to attain them, or do you actually go away and avoid and prevent things happening? I found this really interesting because it means a lot when you're trying to set people to achieve things. Really important one. Source is, what do people use when they are making judgments? Do they listen to what other people do, or do they look at internal values and standards? One's called reason. Okay, so this is options or procedures. And then the final one is called decision factors in terms of how you make your decisions. Okay, now what we've got here is proactive or reactive. In the brackets, it's giving you the rough population spread of people. So about 15 to 20% are proactive people. They take the initiative, they get going, they do things, and they don't really think too much, and they just jump in. Okay. The bigger proportion are equally proactive and reactive. So it depends on the context of the situation that they're in. So in some cases, they jump in very quickly. Other cases, they might need a bit more information before they actually react. And then 15 to 20% of people are what we would call reactive. And they motivated to wait, listen, analyze, consider, react. So they're not going to do things very quickly. So obviously, this is really important if you're looking at team structures and things like that, to be aware of your different people and how they're going to react, because how you manage them will also be different too in that situation. Now, obviously, what I've done for each of these traits here is to try and give some examples of some of the language that an individual might use. Because obviously, when you're talking to people and you're trying to assess what kind of person they are, if you can pick up some of these markers as you go along, that will help you get an idea of what that person is. So proactive people will use short sentences, quick, do it, go for it, jump in now, get it done, don't wait. Whereas a reactive person means, I'd like to understand that a bit more. Can we think about it? No, I need to see some facts and analyze it. We could do this. So you can see it's immediately slower, more considered in how they will talk. So you'll pick that up also in terms of how they might speak. And then the majority of us obviously are fitting somewhere in the middle. So it depends on the situation they're in. I know for me in my work, there'll be some bits which I can make a decision just like that. And then other bits it's like, no, I need to see a bit more because there's more things to think about and I'd need some more data. So that's a good example. And I think most of us, as I say, we fit in this middle group. Just depends on what's happening. Sometimes you can be quick and sometimes you might want to do a little more digging, looking around. These ones, and I'm sure everybody knows these hot buttons, things that actually just make you go. Anybody who's got a brother or sister, I'm sure they can tell you exactly what buttons they need to press to get a reaction. Okay, this is just to tell you these are things if you say or do, you get an immediate reaction from those people. It could be really good, hopefully that's the one you want, or it could be really negative. But anybody who's got siblings will know exactly what they mean. And I think kids probably can do this with their parents too. I know ours can. It's very easy. They just need to say a few things, a little phrase or something, or whatever the case may be. So hot buttons. So this is just to be aware of what will give you. It gives you a big reaction, whatever you might say. Obviously in the picture here, I'm trying to focus on the more positive ones, but you equally may get negative ones. Okay, so that's what we call hot buttons or criteria. Useful to be aware of, but there's not many words on that one. That will be a particular memory or something like that, which triggers that reaction. Right, this one I find really interesting, actually. Now, some of you are coaches. Everyone talks about setting goals and doing things like that. Well, actually, goals only really work for the people who go what are called mainly towards. They work towards a goal. They want to prioritize and they want to go that way. Okay, so setting goals is fantastic words for them, because that's what they aspire to. But you equally have 40% of people who actually go away from goals. This person tends to focus on what could go wrong, more the negatives, to prevent negatives happening. And I found this really interesting because everyone talks about goal setting, you've got to do this. Well, 40% of people, that's not really what's going to drive them. So you would need to think here, if you were looking at achieving things, is looking at what, if you do this, what does it help you prevent? So you might say taking up exercise might help you prevent you getting ill for somebody who want to go and start doing exercise who's no away person. Okay, so I thought this was really interesting because I always thought people went towards. So very, very important to remember that when you're dealing with people, work out, are they towards or an away? Then there's a small percentage which do equally towards and away. But I think this is really important for people when they're coaching or doing things or even running projects. This is a big one to bear in mind because you might get it wrong if you just assume everyone wants goals. Okay, thanks, Tina. Okay, here's obviously some of the words that you would pick up for goal-oriented people. Benefits, attaining goals, obtaining, have to, get to, include, this is what we can achieve, Whereas the away people would be avoid, steer clear of, get rid of, prevent happening, not have to worry about. So those people. An interesting one like here, if you're thinking work-wise, is some people, when they maintain systems, probably away people are better because they're going to focus on preventing things happening. So maybe an IT support or something. For these people, away people might actually be better because they will see potential problems and actually want to stop them happening. Okay, so it's important when you look at jobs, suddenly some of these characteristics become really important. And you could build that into your job spec or something like that, or when you're recruiting, because some of these characteristics will be better in certain situations. Right, motivation sources, internal or external. This is often how we make decisions. Now, I'm sure you would have seen in certain life situations, you've got the external people, which is 40%. They need reinforcing. They need people to tell them feedback that they're doing the right thing. Some people might describe them as being quite needy, quite high maintenance from a management perspective, because you're always having to feed back to them. They want corroboration of what they're thinking is correct. Okay, so that's an important one. Internal people, they'll make decisions based on their own standards, and they won't really care so much about what other people think, because they will believe that they are correct and they have their own set of rules. You'll see, we'll touch on rules a little bit later. So basically they make decisions based off their own set of values and standards. And then 1/5 is a mixture of the two. Okay, so this is quite interesting when you look at how, if you're going to put people in charge of teams, how are they going to make decisions? Are they mainly external? So do you need feedback? Do they have meetings and things like that? So important, again, important thing to look at. Right, obviously here's some of the language signals you could pick up. An internal person might say to you, only you can decide. You know, it's up to you. What do you think? You might want to consider. I want to run something by you to get your input. Okay. External, so they might say, oh, Dino says so-and-so, or Adrian says so-and-so, or my boss says so-and-so. Those are external people. So they're looking for all these external signals coming back in to reinforce and give them confirmation that they're doing the right thing. The feedback you'll get, the approval you'll get. What will other people say or notice? So those are kind of things the results will show. So results, obviously confirmation of what's happening, confirming back, yes, it's happening, it's the right thing, it's the right decision. So those are kind of words which people who are looking for external feedback or for their decision making will use. So again, this is quite important when you think about working in a team and you're putting people in certain positions. How are they going to make their decisions? Can they make decisions on their own, or do they need to have feedback? Good point there from Adrian saying there about school system, external praise and feedback. If you think for most of us, a lot of us are dependent now, it's drilled into us, external signals. Did someone say you did a good job? We are drilled very much into that. But as you could see from the split of people, it's not necessarily that way, but we are driven very much from external factors. And I guess if you look at our marketing that we have these days, a lot of it's driven all off external confirmation. Have you got the right shirts? Are you wearing the right things? All external drivers. Right. Okay. This again, the next one is how you actually make decisions. And this is quite an interesting one because this is depending on what kind of jobs you do. This might actually be incredibly important. So it's split mainly between what we call options. In other words, people are looking what you can do. What are the possibilities you can do? What kind of things might you be able to do? And I would say I'm probably more of an options person. In most cases, I'm always looking at what kind of things can we do? It's kind of the bits I need to do. Got a problem here. What are the opportunities we can do to fix this problem? So I need to do a lot of that, and it's what I really, really enjoy. Equally, I know there are 40% of people who follow procedures. Okay, they want a step-by-step process. Now, if you think in certain jobs and things that we do, so say you are and work in the emergency ward in a hospital, that will be very procedures driven. If somebody comes in with a heart attack, we do this, or fire crews and people like that, they're very good at following procedures. And that's how they work. And that's obviously very good for in high pressure situations because they can just stick and they can follow it. They don't get distracted. There's not something exciting that's going to take their mind away. They follow through and they get things done. Equally, a weakness is, though, if there's not a process, they might not even know where to start. So it has strengths and weaknesses. So you will see at certain jobs and careers, there'll probably be an emphasis maybe towards one side or the other on that side. So as I say, like people like firemen and things like that, where you want to follow procedures or follow rules, you want a procedural mind of thinking. You can make people do things. And then obviously for blue sky thinking, creatives and people, they want to, what are the options? How can I do things? So different sets of people. And then 1/5 does a bit of both. Now, I'd be interested to see where people think they fit on that one. How many options people have we got here, if you think about it? Many options people here, or are we mainly procedures people? Okay, so here are some of the examples. They say they have options people to opportunity, choices, alternatives. What else can we do? And the procedure people be first we do this, next then we do this, or this is the right way we do it. Here's how we do it. It's tried and tested. This is what you must do. First step is, so you can see there's a structure and it's just following bang, 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 bang. So those are obviously, those are pretty easy words to pick up if you were talking to people. And you might ask them about a situation at work, what do you do? And then they might say, oh, you have this option, or you might go, oh, you take this procedure. So you could quite easily identify which camp people tend to be in what context. So you need to ask the question in terms of what they're actually doing, because as Alicia said there, in some situations, it's going to be ideas or solving a problem. So it's ideas. And then, okay, now we've got the idea. Now, how do we make it happen? So then you click into the procedure, but okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So it's all, remember, with all of these, it's context driven that you're looking at. You're not going to be always this for every situation. It depends on what the situation is. Right. Okay. This is I found this one really interesting. I've just drawn them in different size blobs to try and give you an idea. This is your ability to react or need for change. And this is really important, especially if you think nowadays with things changing very fast. In my business, obviously, I've been doing lots of business transformation. So this is a real key part of what we do. And I was quite amazed at some of the spread of this, actually. So 5% of people, or what they call sameness, don't like change. They really don't like change in any shape or form. And they can't deal with any big change. So these will be kind of people who will probably stay in the same job in the same place and not move at all, because that's them. Okay. So you get a few of those. Then you get the vast bulk of us are 65%. Are people that like sameness, but they can do with some change. Okay, so they don't want radical change or drastic change. They want to see things improving and getting better, but they don't want a huge, big change. Okay, they can deal with big change every sort of 5 to 7 years. Okay, so that's the vast majority of people. Then you've got 20% who love change, the new shiny toy, always wanting to change from change and change and change, and always bouncing around. Okay, so that's quite a significant percentage, but they will always be after new change. So they won't stick to anything. You probably wouldn't want them to be trying to complete a project for you, because they'll probably get very bored and they'll want to look for the next new shiny thing. And then there's 10% that deal with, they're pretty comfortable with quite a lot of change, but they don't want too drastic change. So that's 10%. So it's a very small percentage. So the vast bulk can do with some change, but it needs to be a gradual change. And it needs to be showing it's improving. So this is really big. So if you're looking at a business and you're going to go and do change, the kind of words you're going to say, you've got to be words improvement, gradual. Those are kind of words to them, they're going to make them feel comfortable. Whereas if you use rapid change or something like that, that would probably unsettle them. So the kind of words you use are really, really important. If you can just pop onto the next slide, please, Dina. So just to give you some of the examples there, so sameness is common, unchanged, as we've always done. The main one, sameness with exception, is more, better, same as, except for, evolving, So obviously getting better, improving, progress, gradual improvement, develop. So we're going on a nice upward trend. It's not too rapid. So those are the words that they will respond to. So if you suddenly said to them, unique, revolutionary, for some of those people, they'll suddenly start feeling very unsettled. Whereas a difference person, revolutionary, great, new ideas, one of a kind, brand new, that'll excite them. That'll be something that they really want to do. Wow, I want to go and see it. I want to go and find out about it. And they'll rush towards it. So those would be the words. They were totally new, changed. And then obviously the one which sits between the two is obviously it's better, it's quite new, big improvements or improvements, unique, upgrade. So they are happier with a faster level of change. So this is a really important bit for all the stuff, because if you think at the moment, we are going through a huge change, but actually the vast bulk of people like change to be a bit more gradual rather than this fast accelerating growth. So this is an important part in the words you use in terms of getting those people on board. Okay. Okay. Right, so that's the motivation pattern. So those are the things which actually get people excited and trigger and going along. Now we got to go into the next bit, is what they refer to in the book is what's called productivity patterns. It's how they're going to take information and tasks and the environment that they need for them to really actually then be able to excel and blossom. And it's also how they go about making decisions. So the first bit there is what motivates them, what grabs their attention, and that side of it. So that's the way I always think of the motivation side, is what's the first bit that catches your attention? How can I grab their attention? Now, once I've grabbed their attention and I'm speaking their language, how can we actually get them to start executing and doing what we want to do? So that's actually also a really important part of it. So there's always two parts to making this very successful: the motivation, and we'll touch now on the productivity. Right, in productivity, we have 8 different things here, and we'll whiz through them each in turn. We have scope. So do you see the big picture, or do you like the detail? So that's the two sides of it. Attention, direction, that's self or other. Stress response is an interesting one. So this is, we'll go through this and we'll touch on it. Stress response is an important one in terms of how people react under pressure in a particular situation. Style. This is the working style, and this is a really interesting one now, given we've had the lockdown where people have been working at home. It's important to look at this because some people, the independents, are probably quite happy working at home. Other people, which they call proximity, like people around them, but they like to have a bit of control where they are. And then obviously you have the cooperative or collaborative people who need to be with other people. So this is an important one now when you're looking at offices and things like that and how your teams work. Organization, this is interesting. We'll go through it. It's about when you interact. How do you interact? Do you interact with people, or do you interact with things and processes? Rule structure. This is interesting for management. We have a bunch there in terms of how you apply rules in a particular situation. And then the last two are really, really important in terms of our messaging. What they call the convincer channel. See, hear, read, do. What are the signals that you need to have for you to be convinced about something? And then building on top of that, given your convincer channel, you have what's called your convincer mode. And this is how many examples do you have to have? What do you need to see before you are convinced? And we'll go into it. I'll do a slide on those as we go. Right, here we go. When we look at this, most people are mainly big picture, limited ability to deal with detail. I know for myself, I need to draw pictures because I need to see how it all fits together. That's how my brain works, and then I can go into details. So I'm definitely a big picture to start with, and then I can go into detail. That's 60% of us are big pictures. So if we are talking about something, don't give too much detail, because we can only deal with so much detail at one point in time for the vast majority of people. So that's something always to be aware when you just talking to people and presenting. And I think you'll see in lots of presentation talks and things like that is don't put too many points on a page, because people can only register a few of them. So that is coming back to the big picture. You'll also get some people who want to dive into the detail, in the weeds. And that's what they're really, really important on. But equally, they can't see the big picture. So now that's also worth remembering. So I'm sure you've had presentations where for some of these detail people, you need to put enough detail in there to keep them involved in what you're talking about. Because if I didn't put things like percentages and stuff in here, probably some of the detail people will be switched off already, if they haven't already. So that's an important bit. So for detail people, they need to have enough detail to keep them interested. So this is important when you're presenting things as well. And then some which will be equally big picture and detail. Now, as Alicia mentioned earlier, you may well be big picture to start with, and then you need to drill down and become detailed to do things. That's normal, but obviously where you start from, which is what this is referring to, where do you start from? Do I start from the big picture or do I start from the little detail? Now, obviously for mainly detailed people, they probably won't join the dots together very well. They'll be fantastic at their little bit, but if you want them to design a process that fits together over a big thing, they might not be so good at that, but they'll be fantastic at that little bit. Obviously, these words are quite easy to pick up: big picture, in general, concepts, overview. Those are typical words for big picture. And then precisely, specifically, exactly, minute detail. Those would be things that would tell you they are very much detailed people. So that one's pretty self-explanatory for scope on that side. Thanks, Dino. Okay. Oh, okay. This one's quite skewed, obviously, and this is how much reaction or how much people react to other people. So it's attention, direction, self or others. A very, very small amount of people, only 7%, basically don't really notice what anybody else says. They don't really care either. So they're very, very small amount of those. The vast majority of us actually do react to what people say, do nonverbal and things like that. That's the vast majority of people will be reacting to what they see around them and the feedback they get. So it's only a very small amount which are not able to do that. And you'll see some people maybe who have some certain conditions or things like that actually really don't notice what people think. They just don't notice them at all, completely ignore and aren't receptive to anything like that. And so obviously how you might deal with that person, it's no good jumping up and down and making things like that because they're not going to notice it. Go straight past you. So then you'd probably need to deal with facts or something very detailed to get through to them. Okay, but you would pick up very quickly because they wouldn't respond to your cues, or you wouldn't know, you wouldn't get interaction with them. So you would know that those very small percentage of people, you would need to connect with them probably in a different way on details or facts where there's no emotions on that side. So we tend to, obviously most of us actually do respond to other interactions. Thanks, Dino. Okay, obviously here are some of the words you might look over here. So obviously if you're looking for interactions for others, one of the bits who are all, everyone who's been coaching and stuff like that, we notice the importance of mirroring and matching people and their nonverbal behavior when we're talking with them, tones, how we talk to them, all of that. So that's a big part of what we do when we do that. As you can see here, when itself, you're talking about facts. If this is important to you, what's important to you, X. I'd like to see this. It's very precise, very factual. Luckily, it's a very small group of people that are like that. So most people pick up visual cues and things like that. Right, okay. Response stress. How does a person react to normal stresses in a given context? Because obviously this depends on the context you've got. And this is an interesting one. So if you were thinking about somebody who was a call center person, you wouldn't want a feeling person, because if they have a really bad experience with a customer, they're going to be probably pretty useless for the rest of the day because their feelings have all been upset and things like that. So feeling, you don't want people who are feeling for stress. For super stress, you actually want thinking people who don't really have much feeling at all. So if you're thinking of an air traffic controller or someone like that, you want a thinking person because they can just keep focused on going through those steps. And it doesn't matter what's happening outside, we are just going through those steps. So for really, really high pressure stuff, you want a thinking person because they're not going to actually interact with feelings or things like that. So that's quite interesting, that one. So I thought about that. And then obviously the very, very big chunk of us is choice. You can obviously have some feelings, you can have and think as well, and that's the vast bulk of us. But it does mean for certain real pressure jobs, you need a thinking person. Yeah, I agree with you. Emotional air traffic controller. Whew, I'll be going by road. So yeah, interesting one. That so different jobs. This is an important part. So as I say, your customer care person, you don't want to be a feeling person, because they'll have bad days and they won't be able to work properly. So you want somebody who can divorce themselves a little bit from emotion. Okay, so yeah, here are some of the words you might think as like thinking is clearly, logical, rational, cold. You might describe them as cold because they don't have any social interaction. That would be a good indicator of someone who's just very thinking under stress. Statistics, no empathy, hard facts. Choice, obviously, we have the ability to have empathy when we want it, be appropriate, makes good sense, so you can understand what other people are feeling and base your decision a little bit off that. And then feeling, I'm sure we probably know a few of these people. When something goes wrong, it goes all wildly wrong and it's all terrible, and it's a big thing. Those people have a big reaction. Okay, you don't want them under stress, because they're just going to, everybody around them is going to get stressed out because of the way they react. Okay, so you don't want those kind of people in a very highly stressed environment. But they'll be fantastic for other things in terms of if you want to get lots of energy and getting them doing things, because they will be very feeling. So probably very creative people will have more of those, and they can really bring a huge energy and stuff. Right, this is a really important one here, given especially what we've been going through with COVID and those kind of things, and how the work environment is changing. And if you want to get the best out of people, what is going to be the right way for them? Some people are happy, chuffed to bits to be working from home, don't need to see their colleagues, and are very comfortable with that. So we got 20% of those people who can literally stand alone and they'll be absolutely fine. The vast majority of us do like people around, though we do want to have our little area around us which we have control. And I think if you look back, most people like to be in control, so that kind of makes sense. But we still want to have people around us as well. Okay, so it's an area of control with people around them. So this would be working in the office, and you might be working on different projects, but you meet up with people and you have those emotional connections and things like that. So that's 60%, which is the vast bulk. And then the bottom 20% are people who have to work in a team. You couldn't get them. So for them, lockdown has probably been an absolute disaster. It's been probably absolutely nightmare, because they can't connect. They can't go and see people. These people need to see people. And seeing them on a video probably won't cut the mustard at all for them. There will be people who need to connect and have people in the same place and feed off that energy and do that. So those are 13 people. So when you're looking at business and work and things like that, this is something to bear in mind. So working at home all the time will be great for a smaller percentage of people. Most people do need to have that people interaction in some cases, and some have to have it all the time. Okay, so this is an important bit for your businesses or in whatever you're doing, is just to remember that. And I know for me, I definitely need to see people. I couldn't stay at home all the time because I get connections and I feed off the energy when I see people. So that for me is really important. I don't need to work in a team all the time, but I do need to have people around me. Okay, so here's a few bits of your words that you might have. Obviously, without interruption, responsibility, do it alone, you're alone. Proximity, this is probably good. So a lot of managers probably should be proximity. So they'll lead people. You'll run a project, for example, or something like that. So most of your, I guess, people who are managing teams should probably sit in the proximity one. And then you'll get some who just want to cooperate. Now, I think this is a useful one. It's interesting because I'm sure you've had the statement where that some people are great team members, but they're absolutely rubbish leaders. And I'm sure people have got experiences of that. So people, and you see in business or things, they get promoted, and they suddenly get made boss. They out of their little comfort zone now. Then they not in a team, not for them, that can cause an issue. So I'm sure you've seen this and exposed where some people have been amazing in one situation and then they get promoted and they're much more on their own and they become a fish out of water. I certainly have seen that. And I would say probably I'm much more proximity person or cooperative. I'm definitely not an independent on that side. So it's interesting to see this. So this is when, if you're looking at putting who you're going to put in charge of teams or things like that, this is something to bear in mind. Which are the right kind of people? Because an amazing team player might not be the best leader because they always feeding off everybody else and maybe can't make a decision. So it's something to think about when you're picking your teams. So obviously, mainly thing, which is an interesting one. So these are getting the job done. So a lot of your project-based people who can just steam through getting bits and pieces done, they are mainly thing focused. As I mentioned earlier, mainly people person will probably be HR and those things. So they're worrying about how HR are and things like that. So they're more the feeding side. And then there's quite a big chunks that actually are people and thing. So those two there. So you can see there's quite a significant bunch who fit in both categories. Thanks, Dino. Okay, obviously here are some obvious bits that you'll use in terms of indicators. They use people's names, ask what your thoughts are, feel good, people like this, our people need this, folks will be impacted. So they're focusing very much on the person stuff. And then things, that's things, systems, process, project, task, job is, goal, organization, accomplishments. So it's very much focused on very specific completion of things on that side. So those are the thing focused. Thanks, Dino. Right, rule structure. This is quite an interesting one, this one actually, because if you think about how people deal with people, this is the rules that they will either apply to themselves and then the people around them, or so this is actually is an important part, especially for decision makers. And if you're looking at people who are probably going to be running teams, the big bunch at the top are the what they call my rules for me and my rules for you. And they're probably very good at telling people what they do. This is what the rule is. This is what you do. School, perfect example of my situation. My nothing means I have rules for me and I don't really care about you, what you do. So this is just what I do. Okay, so those people really don't care people around them. No, these are probably people who apply rules. It's an interesting one, small group of people, 7%. They don't really have many rules for themselves, but they'll have rules for the people around them. As you can see there, this is a typical middle management pattern. Do as I say, don't do as I do. Might be the quote that goes with these people. Okay, do as I say, don't do as I do. And then there's a bunch at the end, 15%, which is quite a significant bunch, which they would classify as my and your. So in other words, I've got rules for me, you have your rules. Good at seeing both perspectives, but probably not very good at being leaders because they're not very good at telling people what to do. So these people are probably good team players and things like that because they can understand and they could act as go-betweens between groups, but don't expect them to tell people what to do. Okay, so probably good, I'd say people who sit in the middle, maybe between two teams or something like that, because they can see both sides, but they won't be very decisive and telling people what to do. Okay, thanks, Dino. And here's some of the example language that you'll need, that needs to go with them. That you'll see. So obviously things like what's good for the goose, good for the gander, suggestions for that. And then for my and yours, different strokes for different folks. Not everyone's the same, each to his own. You'll need to work out what's best for you. So that's the person who obviously, I do it my way, you do it your way, but will not be very good at leading and telling people what to do. Okay, thanks, Dina. Right, now we're getting towards the last couple of things. This is an interesting one because if you think about when you're wanting to get something done or get change done, is what are the channels that people use to listen or see or hear or do to get convinced? The vast majority, well, the biggest chunk is 55, need to see evidence. What type of information does a person need to start a process of getting convinced about something? They need to see the evidence. Yes, it's better. I can see we're doing better. Or this is giving me more time. Or I can see I can do this faster. Something like that. So that is seeing is believing. A significant chunk is then hearing what people might say. So they might go to a presentation, they might read an article, hear a webinar or podcast or something like that, where someone is presenting a view, and they will listen to that, especially if the person is actually a well-known in that field or something. They will probably give it quite a lot of weight. I was quite surprised at the read one. It's quite small. It's only 3% sitting there. Actually, the math doesn't look quite right on that one. There's something wrong with the math there. That should be a bit higher, I think. If I do my maths correctly, 80, no, maybe not. Reading's very small, so only a few people need to read articles. But that's the interesting thing about this one, is if you look at lots of the surveys that have been done about social media, is how many people believe what they read on their phone is correct. And that's quite scary. So I would probably challenge that report as to how low that is, given that social media is one of the sources that people get lots of information from. So I'd probably challenge that and expect that to be probably a little bit higher. And then obviously learning by doing, or being convinced by doing, seeing it, the Downtick Thomases, those kind of people. For some people, doing it actually gives them a conviction that's the right thing to do. So in terms of actually doing training, or if you're changing a company and how you might do something, an example might be where you do it this way and you try the other way. Which one is better? That will be one way of actually giving people confidence that actually one way is better. But in my area where we do business transformation, it's really important to understand that you've got all these different conduits that people have for getting information in to be convinced. And so it's important that we actually make sure we touch on all of these. Don't just do seeing, make sure. So your written messages, your spoken messages, and everything you put out, stuff you put out on social media, needs to be very consistent as well. So if we can move on, thanks, Dino. And we'll touch on the next slide, which builds on this one. Okay. So obviously the people who like to see, take a look. It's pretty clear. Light at the end of the tunnel, writing on the wall. Those would be common things that they would say. Okay. Obviously for people hearing, it might be online chatter, rumor has it, those kind of things. Obviously reading, they would have just mentioned where they've read it, seen it, or something like that. So I saw an article in The Economist or FT or whatever it may be, if it's business-wise or something like that. And then for those people who like to try and do things practically, it's let's work out, let's try it out, let's try this, let's work on it. So that's being actively involved in doing it. And for some people, that obviously is often the best way for them. Okay, thanks, Dino. Right, now this one actually builds on the earlier one in terms of your convincer channel, your convincer mode. And you would have heard about this, and how often do people need to hear things or see things or listen to things for them to actually be convinced. So this is actually, we would have heard about this in lots of, so for most people, it's the number of examples. So 52% need a number of examples to make them be convinced about something. And this is obviously very important if you think you are trying to have a change message or something like that. This is really important. So you need to keep on writing the examples. So obviously, when you look at sales and things like that, there's mention that you need to have 7 examples or something like that of touch points where people before they're convinced. I know Alicia did some stuff on sales and things like that before, and has mentioned this, as have some other speakers, but quite interesting. So here's the facts. So now this is the facts by why you need to do that many times, because I need to have a certain number of examples before people go, yes. For a small number of people, it's only 8%, they will, the idea will just be, wow, fantastic, got it, that's fantastic, and they'll make a decision, brilliant. So they don't need very much, but you've obviously spoken to them and what makes them tick. So you've had to get other bit of the information right and how you're presenting to them, so they can see it straight away. There we are, done, decision made. The second last one there is the consistent bit. This is an interesting one. They need to consistently get the same message. They always need to be convinced about what's going on. So consistency of messaging here. So if you were thinking of you doing a big project or something like that in a business, that consistency of message that comes out needs to be there for these people to keep on. So you need to keep on working on these people consistently to make sure that they are convinced. And then for some of these, and this is, I think, is quite an interesting one. I think for a lot of salespeople, they'll get this for things like maybe might be financial services stuff and things like that. People need a period of time to get all the information in, to think about it, sit in it maybe a bit, get it right in their head, and then they'll make a decision. So there's a period of time. So if you try to do a really hard sell, and it probably wouldn't work with lots of people because they want a certain amount of time to sit and think about what they're doing. Okay, so it's really important. So it does show you here when you're trying to do something, it's the message. It's obviously got a number. You've got to say something a number of times sufficiently. It's got to be consistent, and you need to do it over a period of time, and then you've covered pretty much everybody. But it does say a lot about how you message and do things on that side. Okay, thanks, Dino. Okay, so here are some of the words. Obviously, number of examples. Obviously, quote a figure. Automatic, they will assume things and make a decision straight away. Consistent, obviously, just hear it all the time. And then obviously a period of time. So now I'll come back to you in a couple of weeks, for example. Something like that. That would tell you that's a person who actually needs a bunch of time to actually get everything to be comfortable with what they make. So if you put all these other factors together, you'll suddenly start getting pictures of people. Okay, so thank you. Thanks, Dino. Right, so what we've touched on there, what I was really aiming to do for today's talk is to show that there's lots of different pieces of a jigsaw that you need to put together when you're looking at a group of people or even a particular individual for the situation that you have. And why is this important? If you think in every day we're building teams or we're working together, and depending on what you're doing, you're going to need different skill sets, and those different people are going to need different things to make them perform well. They're going to need to be managed in a different way. Do they need feedback? Don't they need feedback? Do they need people around them and things like that? So if we can actually have the time to invest at the beginning to do a little bit of research and find out about our people, we're going to find the right people for the roles, the situation that we need. We can create the right environment for those people to flourish, like we've seen there. Are they on their own? Do they need to have people around them? Do they need to be part of a team, for example? And we can craft the right messaging and signals to them to make them all feel motivated, and also get them to do what we want them to do. So I think if you look back at other stuff, if you think when people have done its calls to action and things like that, when you're doing sales, what's the call to action? What you're going to make them do? That's one of those things. That's exactly what that is. What's the message that's making them excited, that's motivating them in the first place? Is it solving a problem? If they're away people, so if they're away from it, what problem is it solving and making it better? Or if it's somebody wanting to grow, what goal are they growing towards? So you can change your messaging to actually connect more quickly, and therefore if you were trying to do a sale, potentially close a sale more quickly. If you're creating a team, you can get the right mixture of people in a team. Obviously, you need to have that person who's happy to tell people what to do. You need to have team members. You need to have people who are going to be very good at doing procedures, and like a project manager who'll just tick off. Have you done this today? Have you done this today? Those very procedural people. So it's really useful to understand the different personalities and skill sets and environments you need to have to make you successful. And I just caught on, obviously, when I was off there, about Alicia's point about how businesses are now going to have to change to actually fit people in. And I think we are seeing this. We can't have homogeneity to do that because it's not very creative. So how do you actually make it all fit together? And I think with all the change that we're having as well, that's also a big thing, because as you could see there, lots of people can't deal, vast majority, 65%, can't deal with lots of change. They can deal with change in little bits. So how do you dress that up so they feel comfortable to keep performing? Okay, so I suppose the message is it's time well spent to do a little bit of work to understand what motivates people and what environment they need, because actually you'll get much more out of them. You'll recruit the right people. They'll probably perform much better because they're happier, and the end result for everybody will be a much better situation. So in summary, it's worth looking at this. I find it fascinating because I do a lot of business transformation, and it explained lots of things where things had worked, often by luck, not by judgment, because we hadn't gone deep enough into it, and also where things had gone wrong, because we're talking at complete cross purposes, wasn't understanding what drove that person and coming with a message that's different. So not surprisingly, we didn't connect, and things didn't happen. Okay, thanks, Dino. Okay, yeah, so as I say in summary, if we can understand how people think, are motivated, and the environment they need, we can craft our communication so it's music to their ears. Our actions and environment are right ones to get them to do what's needed. One-size messaging and actions most certainly does not fit all. Obviously, in certain jobs and things, you'll have more of one kind of person, potentially. So if you were in a support role in software, you'll probably have people who are more procedural, for example. So you will get slightly different populations. But that's really all from me. If I say happy to share the slides if anybody would like them. I have no problem about that at all. I'd thoroughly recommend that book. It's a brilliant book. I found it really interesting. If you have to deal a lot with people and stuff, it's a really, really great book.
Boom! You made it here! Good on you. Make sure you click the subscribe button below and check out the playlist at the end. If you'd like to come along to our Sunday sessions where we host a live, free Q&A for our students and members, you're welcome. I'll see you there.